Death on the Air by Ngaio Marsh. On the 25th of December at 7:30 a.m, Mr. Septimus Tonks was found dead beside his wireless set. It was Emily Parks, an under-housemaid, who discovered him. She butted open the door and entered, carrying mop, duster and carpet sweeper. At that precise moment she was greatly startled by a voice that spoke out of the darkness. "Good morning, everybody," said the voice in superbly inflected syllables, "and a Merry Christmas." Emily yelped, but not loudly, as she immediately realized what had happened. Mr. Tonks had omitted to turn off his wireless before going to bed. She drew back the curtains, revealing a kind of pale murk, which was a London Christmas dawn, switched on the light, and saw Septimus. He was seated in front of the radio. It was a small but expensive set, specially built for him. Septimus sat in an armchair, his back to Emily, his body tilted towards the radio. His hands, the fingers curiously bunched, were on the ledge of the cabinet under the tuning and volume knobs. His chest rested against the shelf below, and his head leaned on the front panel. He looked rather as though he was listening intently to the interior secrets of the wireless. His head was bent over, so Emily could see his bald top with its trail of oiled hairs. He did not move. "Beg pardon, sir?" gasped Emily. She was again greatly startled. Mr. Tonks's enthusiasm for radio had never before induced him to tune in at 7:30 in the morning. "Special Christmas service," the cultured voice was saying. Mr. Tonks sat very still. Emily, in common with the other servants, was terrified of her master. She did not know whether to go or to stay. She gazed wildly at Septimus and realized that he wore a dinner jacket. The room was now filled with the clamour of pealing bells. Emily opened her mouth as wide as it would go and screamed and screamed and screamed. Chase, the butler, was first to arrive. He was a pale, flabby man, but authoritative. He said, "What's the meaning of this outrage?" and then saw Septimus. He went to the armchair, bent down, and looked into his master's face. He did not lose his head, but said in a loud voice, "My God!" and then to Emily, "Shut your face!" By this vulgarism he betrayed his agitation. He seized Emily by the shoulders and thrust her towards the door, where they were met by Mr. Hislop, the secretary, in his dressing gown. Mr. Hislop said, "Good heavens, Chase, what is the meaning of—" And then his voice too was drowned in the clamour of bells and renewed screams. Chase put his fat white hand over Emily's mouth. "In the study, if you please, sir. An accident. Go to your room, will you, and stop that noise, or I'll give you something to make you." This to Emily, who bolted down the hall, where she was received by the rest of the staff who had congregated there. Chase returned to the study with Mr. Hislop and locked the door. They both looked down at the body of Septimus Tonks. The secretary was the first to speak. But he's dead," said little Mr. Hislop. "I suppose there can't be any doubt," whispered Chase. "Look at the face. Any doubt? My God!" Mr. Hislop put out a delicate hand towards the bent head and then drew it back. Chase, less fastidious, touched one of the hard wrists, gripped and then lifted it. The body at once tipped backwards as if it were made of wood. One of the hands knocked against the butler's face. He sprang back with an oath. There lay Septimus, his knees and his hands in the air, his terrible face turned up to the light. Chase pointed to the right hand. 2 fingers and the thumb were slightly blackened. "Ding, dong, dang, ding. For God's sake, stop those bells!" cried Mr. Hislop. Chase turned off the wall switch. Into the sudden silence there came the sound of the door handle being rattled and Guy Tonks' voice on the other side. "Hislop, Mr. Hislop, Chase, what's the matter?" "Just a moment, Mr. Guy." Chase looked at the secretary. "You go, sir." So it was left to Mr. Hislop to break the news to the family. They listened to his stammering revelation in stupefied silence. It was not until Guy, the eldest of the 3 children, stood in the study that any practical suggestion was made. "What has killed him?" asked Guy. "It's extraordinary," burbled Hislop. "Extraordinary. He looks as if he'd been galvanised," said Guy. "We ought to send for a doctor," suggested Hislop timidly. "Of course. Will you, Mr. Hislop? Dr. Meadows." Hislop went to the telephone and Guy returned to his family. Dr. Meadows lived on the other side of the square and arrived in 5 minutes. He examined the body without moving it. He questioned Chase and Hislop. Chase was very voluble about the burns on the hand. He uttered the word electrocution over and over again. "I had a cousin, sir, that was struck by lightning as soon as I saw the hand." Yes, said Dr. Meadows. "So you said. I can see the burns for myself." "Electrocution," repeated Chase. "There'll have to be an inquest." Dr. Meadows snapped at him, summoned Emily, and then saw the rest of the family: Guy, Arthur, Philippa, and their mother. They were clustered round a cold grate in the drawing-room. Philippa was on her knees trying to light the fire. "What was it?" asked Arthur as soon as the doctor came in. "Looks like electric shock. Guy, I'll have a word with you if you please. Philippa, look after your mother. There's a good child. Coffee with a dash of brandy." "Where are those damn maids? Come on, Guy." Alone with Guy, he said they'd have to send for the police. "The police?" Guy's dark face turned very pale. "Why? What's it got to do with them?" "Nothing, as like as not, but they'll have to be notified. I can't give a certificate as things are. If it's electrocution, how did it happen?" "But the police," said Guy, that's simply ghastly, Dr. Meadows. For God's sake, couldn't you—" "No," said Dr. Meadows, I couldn't. Sorry, Guy, but there it is. But can't we wait a moment? Look at him again. You haven't examined him properly. I don't want to move him, that's why. Pull yourself together, boy. Look here, I've got a pal in the CID, Alleyn. He's a gentleman and all that. He'll curse me like a fury, but he'll come if he's in London, and he'll make things easier for you. Go back to your mother. I'll ring Alleyn up. That was how it came about that the Chief Detective-Inspector Roderick Alleyn spent his Christmas Day in harness. As a matter of fact, he was on duty, and as he pointed out to Dr. Meadows, would have had to turn out and visit his miserable Tonkses in any case. When he did arrive, it was with his usual air of remote courtesy. He was accompanied by a tall, thick-set officer, Inspector Fox, and by the divisional police surgeon. Dr. Meadows took them into the study. Alleyn, in his turn, looked at the horror that had been Septimus. Was he like this when he was found? No, I understand he was leaning forward with his hands on the ledge of the cabinet. He must have slumped forward and been propped up by the chair arms and the cabinet. Who moved him? Chase, the butler. He said he only meant to raise the arm. Rigour is well established. Alleyn put his hand behind the rigid neck and pushed. The body fell forward into its original position. There you are, Curtis, said Alleyn to the divisional surgeon. He turned to Fox. Get the cameraman, will you, Fox? The photographer took 4 shots and departed. Alleyn marked the position of the hands and feet with chalk, made a careful plan of the room, and turned to the doctors. Is it electrocution, do you think? Looks like it, said Curtis. Have to be a PM, of course. Of course. Still, look at the hands. Burns, thumb and 2 fingers bunched together, and exactly the distance between the 2 knobs apart. He'd been tuning his hurdy-gurdy. By gum, said Inspector Fox, speaking for the first time. Do you mean he got a lethal shock from his radio? Asked Dr. Meadows. I don't know. I merely conclude he had his hands on the knobs when he died. It was still going when the housemaid found him. Chase turned it off and got no shock. Yours, partner, said Alleyn, turning to Fox. Fox stooped down to the wall switch. Careful, said Alleyn. I've got rubber soles, said Fox, and switched it on. The radio hummed, gathered volume, and found itself. Noel, Noel, it roared. Fox cut it off and pulled out the wall plug. I'd like to have a look inside this set, he said. So you shall, old boy, so you shall, rejoined Alleyn. Before you begin, I think we'd better move the body. Will you see to that, Meadows? Fox, get Bailey, will you? He's out in the car. Curtis, Hislop, and Meadows carried Septimus Tonks into a spare downstairs room. It was a difficult and horrible business with that contorted body. Dr. Meadows came back alone, mopping his brow, to find Detective Sergeant Bailey, a fingerprint expert, at work on the wireless cabinet. "What's all this?" asked Dr. Meadows. "Do you want to find out if you've been fooling around with the innards?" "He," said Alleyn, "or somebody else." Dr. Meadows looked at the inspector. "You agree with me, it seems. Do you suspect—" "Suspect? I'm the least suspicious man alive. I'm merely being tidy. Well, Bailey, I've got a good one off the chair arm. That'll be the deceased's, won't it, sir?" "No doubt. We'll check up later. What about the wireless?" Fox, wearing a glove, pulled off the knob of the volume control. "Seems to be okay," said Bailey. "It's a sweet bit of work. Not too bad at all, sir." He turned his torch into the back of the radio, undid a couple of screws underneath the set, lifted out the works. "What's that little hole for?" asked Alleyn. "What's that, sir?" said Fox. "There's a hole bored through the panel above the knob, about 1/8 of an inch in diameter. The rim of the knob hides it. One might easily miss it. Move your torch, Bailey. Yes. There. Do you see?" Fox bent down and uttered a bass growl. A fine needle of light came through the front of the radio. "That's peculiar, sir," said Bailey from the other side. I don't get the idea at all." Alleyn pulled out the tuning knob. "There's another one there," he murmured. "Yes. Nice, clean little holes, newly bored. Unusual, I take it." "Unusual's the word, sir," said Fox. "Run away, Meadows," said Alleyn. "Why the devil?" asked Dr. Meadows indignantly. "What are you driving at? Why shouldn't I be here?" "You ought to be with the sorrowing relatives. Where's your corpse-side manner?" "I've settled them. What are you up to?" "Who's being suspicious now?" asked Alleyn mildly. "You may stay for a moment. Tell me about the Tonkses. Who are they?" "What are they? What sort of man was Septimus?" "If you must know, he was a damned unpleasant sort of man." "Tell me about him." Dr. Meadows sat down and lit a cigarette. "He was a self-made bloke," he said, "as hard as nails and, well, coarse rather than vulgar. Like Dr. Johnson, perhaps." "Not in the least. Don't interrupt. I've known him for 25 years. His wife was a neighbour of ours in Dorset, Isabel Forston. I brought the children into this vale of tears, and by Jove, in many ways, it's been one for them. It's an extraordinary household. For the last 10 years, Isabel's condition has been the sort that sends these psycho-jokers dizzy with rapture. I'm only an out-of-date GP, and I just say she's in an advanced stage of hysterical neurosis, frightened into fits of her husband." "I can't understand these holes," grumbled Fox to Bailey. "Go on, Meadows," said Alleyn. "I tackled Sep about her 18 months ago. Told him the trouble was in her mind. He eyed me with a sort of grin on his face and said, 'I'm surprised to learn that my wife has enough mentality to—' But look here, Alleyn, I can't talk about my patients like this. What the devil am I thinking about? You know perfectly well it'll go no further unless—" "Unless what?" "Unless it has to. Do go on." But Dr. Meadows hurriedly withdrew behind his professional rectitude. All he would say was that Mr. Tonks had suffered from high blood pressure and a weak heart, that Guy was in his father's city office, that Arthur had wanted to study art and had been told to read for law, and that Philippa wanted to go on the stage and had been told to do nothing of the sort. "Bullied his children," commented Alleyn. "Find out for yourself. I'm off." Dr. Meadows got as far as the door and came back. "Look here," he said, "I'll tell you one thing. There was a row here last night. I'd asked Hislop, who's a sensible little beggar, to let me know if anything happened to upset Mrs. Sep. Upset her badly, you know, to be indiscreet again. I said he'd better let me know if Sep cut up rough, because Isabel and the young had about as much of that as they could stand. He was drinking pretty heavily. Hislop rang me up at 10:20 last night to say there'd been a hell of a row. Sep bullying Phipps, Philippa, you know, always call her Phipps, in her room. He said Isabel, Mrs. Sep, had gone to bed. I'd had a big day and I didn't want to turn out. I told him to ring again in half an hour if things hadn't quieted down. I told him to keep out of Sep's way and stay in his own room, which is next to Phipps's, and see if she was all right when Sep cleared out. I said that if I didn't hear from him in half an hour, I'd ring again, and if there was no answer, I'd know they were all in bed and quiet. I did ring, Got no answer and went to bed myself. That's all. I'm off. Curtis knows where to find me. You'll want me for the inquest, I suppose. Goodbye. When he had gone, Alleyn embarked on a systematic prowl round the room. Fox and Bailey were still deeply engrossed with the wireless. "I don't see how the gentleman could have got a bump off from the instrument," grumbled Fox. "These control knobs are quite in order. Everything's as it should be. Look here, sir." He turned on the wall switch and tuned in. There was a prolonged humming. "Concludes the programme of Christmas carols," said the radio. "A very nice tone," said Fox approvingly. "Here's something, sir," announced Bailey suddenly. "Found the sawdust, have you?" said Alleyn. "Got it in one," said the startled Bailey. Alleyn peered into the instrument using the torch. He scooped up 2 tiny traces of sawdust from under the hose. "Vantage number 1, said Alleyn. He bent down to the wall plug. "Hello, a 2-way adapter. Serves the radio and the radiator. Thought they were illegal. This is a rum business. Let's have another look at these knobs." He had his look. They were the usual wireless fitments, Bakelite knobs, fitting snugly to the steel shafts that projected from the front panel. "As you say," he murmured, "quite in order. Wait a bit." He produced a pocket lens and squinted at one of the shafts. "Yes. Do they ever wrap blotting paper around these objects, Fox?" "Blotting paper?" ejaculated Fox. "They do not." Alleyn scraped at both the shafts with his penknife, holding an envelope underneath. He rose, groaning, and crossed to the desk. "A corner torn off the bottom bit of blotch," he said presently. "No prints on the wireless, I think you said, Bailey?" "That's right," agreed Bailey morosely. "There'll be none or too many on the blotter, but try, Bailey, try," said Alleyn. He wandered about the room, his eyes on the floor, got as far as the window and stopped. "Fox," he said, "a clue! A very palpable clue." "What is it?" asked Fox. "The odd wisp of blotting paper, no less." Alleyn's gaze travelled up the side of the window curtain. "Can I believe my eyes?" He got a chair, stood on the seat, and with his gloved hand pulled the buttons from the ends of the curtain rod. "Look at this." He turned to the radio, detached the control knobs, and laid them beside the ones he had removed from the curtain rod. 10 minutes later, Inspector Fox knocked on the drawing-room door and was admitted by Guy Tonks. Philippa had got the fire going, and the family was gathered round it. They looked as though they hadn't moved or spoken to one another for a long time. It was Philippa who spoke first to Fox. "Do you want one of us?" "If you please, miss," said Fox. "Inspector Alleyn would like to see Mr. Guy Tonks for a moment, if convenient." "I'll come," said Guy, and led the way to the study. At the door, he paused. "Is he... my father still—" No, sir," said Fox comfortably. "It's all ship-shape in there again." With a lift of his chin, Guy opened the door and went in, followed by Fox. Alleyn was alone, seated at the desk. He rose to his feet. "You want to speak to me?" asked Guy. "Yes, if I may. This has all been a great shock to you, of course. Won't you sit down?" Guy sat in the chair farthest away from the radio. "What killed my father? Was it a stroke?" "The doctors are not quite certain. There'll have to be a post-mortem." "Good God! And an inquest?" "I'm afraid so." "Horrible!" said Guy violently. "What do you think was the matter? Why the devil do these quacks have to be so mysterious? What killed him?" "They think an electric shock." "How did it happen?" "We don't know. It looks as if he got it from the wireless." "Surely that's impossible. I thought they were foolproof." "I believe they are, if left to themselves." For a second, undoubtedly, Guy was startled. Then a look of relief came into his eyes. He seemed to relax all over. "Of course," he said, "he was always monkeying about with it. What had he done?" "Nothing." "But you said if it killed him, he must have done something to it." "If anyone interfered with the set, it was put right afterwards." Guy's lips parted, but he did not speak. He had gone very white. "So you see," said Alleyn, "your father couldn't have done anything. Then it wasn't the radio that killed him." "That, we hope, will be determined by the post-mortem." "I don't know anything about wireless," said Guy suddenly. I don't understand. This doesn't seem to make sense. Nobody ever touched the thing except my father. He was most particular about it. Nobody went near the wireless." "I see. He was an enthusiast." "Yes, it was his only enthusiasm except his business." "One of my men is a bit of an expert," Alleyn said. "He says this is a remarkably good set. You're not an expert, you say. Is there anyone in the house who is?" "My young brother was interested at one time. He's given it up. My father wouldn't allow another radio in the house. Perhaps he may be able to suggest something. But if the thing's all right now, we've got to explore every possibility." "You speak as if... "I speak as I am bound to speak before there has been an inquest," said Alleyn. "Had anyone a grudge against your father, Mr. Tonks?" Up went Guy's chin again. He looked Alleyn squarely in the eyes. "Almost everyone who knew him," said Guy. "Is that an exaggeration?" "No. You think he was murdered, don't you?" Alleyn suddenly pointed to the desk beside him. "Have you ever seen those before?" he asked abruptly. Guy stared at two black knobs that lay side by side on an ashtray. "Those?" he said. "No. What are they?" "I believe they are the agents of your father's death." The study door opened and Arthur Tonks came in. "Guy," he said, "what's happening? We can't stay cooped up together all day. I can't stand it. For God's sake, what happened to him?" "They think those things killed him," said Guy. "Those?" For a split second, Arthur's glance slewed to the curtain rods. Then, with a characteristic flicker of his eyelids, he looked away again. "What do you mean?" he asked Alleyn. "Will you try one of those knobs on the shaft of the volume control?" "But," said Arthur, "they're metal." "It's disconnected," said Alleyn. Arthur picked up one of the knobs from the tray, turned to the radio and fitted the knob over one of the exposed shafts. "It's too loose," he said quickly. "It would fall off. Not if it was packed with blotting paper, for instance." "Where did you find these things?" demanded Arthur. "I think you recognized them, didn't you? I saw you glance at the curtain rod." "Of course I recognized them. I did a portrait of Philippa against those curtains when he was away last year. I've painted the damn things." "Look here," interrupted Guy. "Exactly what are you driving at, Mr. Alleyn? If you mean to suggest that my brother—" "I?" cried Arthur. "What's it got to do with me? Why should you suppose—" "I found traces of blotting paper on the shafts and inside the metal knobs," said Alleyn. "It suggested a substitution of the metal knobs for the Bakelite ones. It's remarkable, don't you think, that they should so closely resemble one another? If you examine them, of course, you'll find they are not identical. Still, the difference is scarcely perceptible." Arthur didn't answer this. He was still looking at the wireless. "I've always wanted to have a look at this set," he said surprisingly. "You're free to do so now," said Alleyn politely. "We have finished with it for the time being." "Look here," said Arthur suddenly. "Suppose metal knobs were substituted for Bakelite ones. It couldn't kill him. He wouldn't get a shock at all. Both controls are grounded." "Have you noticed those very small holes drilled through the panel?" asked Alleyn. "Should they be there, do you think?" Arthur peered at the little steel shafts. "By God, he's right, Guy," he said. "That's how it was done." "Inspector Fox," said Alleyn, "tells me those holes could be used for conducting wires, and that a lead could be taken from the transformer, is it, to one of the knobs, and the other connected to earth," said Fox. "It's a job for an expert. He could get 300 volts or so that way." "That's not good enough," said Arthur quickly. "There wouldn't be enough current to do any damage, only a few hundredths of an amp." "I'm not an expert," said Alleyn, "but I'm sure you're right. Why were the holes drilled, then? Do you imagine someone wanted to play a practical joke on your father? A practical joke on him?" Arthur gave an unpleasant screech of laughter. "Did you hear that, Guy?" "Shut up," said Guy. "After all, he is dead." "It seems almost too good to be true, doesn't it?" "Don't be a bloody fool, Arthur. Pull yourself together. Can't you see what this means? They think he's been murdered." "Murdered?" "They're wrong. None of us had the nerve for that, Mr. Inspector. Look at me. My hands are so shaky they told me I'd never be able to paint. That dates from the time when I was a kid and he shut me up in the cellars for a night. Look at me. Look at Guy. He's not so vulnerable, but he caved in like the rest of us. We were conditioned to surrender. Do you know... Wait a moment, said Alleyn quietly. Your brother is quite right, you know. You'd better think before you speak. This may be a case of homicide. Thank you, sir, said Guy quickly. That's extraordinarily decent of you. Arthur's a bit above himself. It's a shock. The relief, you mean, said Arthur. Don't be such an ass. I didn't kill him, and they'll find it out soon enough. Nobody killed him. There must be some explanation. I suggest that you listen to me, said Alleyn. I'm going to put several questions to both of you. You need not answer them, but it will be more sensible to do so. I understand no one but your father touched this radio. Did any of you ever come into this room while it was in use? Not unless he wanted to vary the programme with a little bullying, said Arthur. Alleyn turned to Guy, who was glaring at his brother. I want to know exactly what happened in this house last night. As far as the doctors can tell us, your father died not less than 3 and not more than 8 hours before he was found. We must try to fix the time as accurately as possible. I saw him at about 8:45, began Guy slowly. I was going out to a supper party at the Savoy and had come downstairs. He was crossing the hall from the drawing room to his room. Did you see him after 8:45, Mr. Arthur? No, I heard him, though. He was working in here with Hislop. Hislop had asked to go away for Christmas. Quite enough. My father discovered some urgent correspondence. Really, Guy, you know, he was pathological. I'm sure Dr. Meadows thinks so. When did you hear him? Asked Alleyn. Some time after Guy had gone. I was working on a drawing in my room upstairs. It's above his. I heard him bawling at little Hislop. It must have been before 10 o'clock, because I went out to a studio party at 10. I heard him bawling as I crossed the hall. And when, said Alleyn, did you both return? I came home at about 12:20, said Guy immediately. I can fix the time because we had gone on to Shea Carlo and they had a midnight stunt there. We left immediately afterwards. I came home in a taxi. The radio was on full blast. You heard no voices? None, just the wireless. And you, Mr. Arthur? Lord knows when I got in. After 1, the house was in darkness, not a sound. You had your own key? Yes, said Guy. Each of us has one. They're always left on a hook in the lobby. When I came in, I noticed Arthur's was gone. What about the others? How did you know it was his? Mother hasn't got one, and Phipps lost hers weeks ago. Anyway, I knew they were staying in and that it must be Arthur who was out. Thank you, said Arthur ironically. You didn't look in the study when you came in, Alleyn asked him. Good Lord, no, said Arthur, as if the suggestion was fantastic. I say, he said suddenly, I suppose he was sitting here, dead. That's a queer thought. He laughed nervously. Just sitting here, behind the door in the dark. How do you know it was in the dark? What do you mean? Of course it was. There was no light under the door. I see. Now, do you two mind joining your mother again? Perhaps your sister will be kind enough to come in here for a moment. Fox, ask her, will you? Fox returned to the drawing room with Guy and Arthur and remained there, blandly unconscious of any embarrassment his presence might cause the Tonkses. Bailey was already there, ostensibly examining the electric points. Philippa went to the study at once. Her first remark was characteristic. Can I be of any help? Asked Philippa. It's extremely nice of you to put it like that, said Alleyn. I don't want to worry you for long. I'm sure this discovery has been a shock to you. Probably, said Philippa. Alleyn glanced quickly at her. I mean, she explained, that I suppose I must be shocked, but I can't feel anything much. I just want to get it all over as soon as possible, and then think. Please tell me what has happened. Alleyn told her they believed her father had been electrocuted, and that the circumstances were unusual and puzzling. He said nothing to suggest that the police suspected murder. I don't think I'll be much help, said Philippa, but go ahead. I want to try to discover who was the last person to see your father or speak to him. I should think very likely I was, said Philippa composedly. I had a row with him before I went to bed. What about? I don't see that it matters. Alleyn considered this. When he spoke again, it was with deliberation. Look here, he said, I think there's very little doubt that your father was killed by an electric shock from his wireless set. As far as I know, the circumstances are unique. Radios are normally incapable of giving a lethal shock to anyone. We have examined the cabinet and are inclined to think that its internal arrangements were disturbed last night. Very radically disturbed. Your father may have experimented with it. If anything happened to interrupt or upset him, it is possible that in the excitement of the moment he made some dangerous readjustment. You don't believe that, do you? Asked Philippa calmly. Since you ask me, said Alleyn. No. I see, said Philippa. You think he was murdered, but you're not sure. She had gone very white, but she spoke crisply. Naturally, you want to find out about my row. About everything that happened last evening, amended Alleyn. What happened was this, said Philippa. I came into the hall some time after 10. I'd heard Arthur go out and had looked at the clock at 5 past. I ran into my father's secretary, Richard Hislop. He turned aside, but not before I saw, not quickly enough. I blurted out, "You're crying!" We looked at each other. I asked him why he stood it. None of the other secretaries could. He said he had to. He's a widower with 2 children. There have been doctor's bills and things. I needn't tell you about this, about his damnable servitude to my father, nor about the refinements of cruelty he'd had to put up with. I think my father was mad, really mad, I mean. Richard gabbled it all out to me, higgledy-piggledy in some sort of horrified whisper. He's been here 2 years, but I'd never realised until that moment that A faint flush came into her cheeks. He's such a funny little man. Not at all the sort I've always thought. Not good-looking or exciting or anything. She stopped, looking bewildered. Yes, said Alleyn. Well, you see, I suddenly realised I was in love with him. He realised it too. He said, "Of course, it's quite hopeless, you know. Us, I mean. Laughable, almost." Then I put my arms round his neck and kissed him. It was very odd, but it seemed quite natural. The point is, my father came out of his room into the hall and saw us. That was bad luck, said Alleyn. Yes, it was. My father seemed really delighted. He almost licked his lips. Richard's efficiency had irritated my father for a long time. It was difficult to find excuses for being beastly with him. Now, of course, he ordered Richard to the study and me to my room. He followed me upstairs. Richard tried to come too, but I asked him not to. My father, I needn't tell you what he said. He put the worst possible construction on what he'd seen. He was absolutely foul, screaming at me like a madman. He was insane. Perhaps it was DTs. He drank terribly, you know. I dare say it's silly of me to tell you all this. No, said Alleyn. I can't feel anything at all, not even relief. The boys are frankly relieved. I can't feel afraid either. She stared meditatively at Alleyn. Innocent people needn't feel afraid. Need they? It's an axiom of police investigation, said Alleyn, and wondered if indeed she was innocent. But it just can't be murder, said Philippa. We were all too much afraid to kill him. I believe he'd win even if you murdered him. He'd hit back somehow. She put her hands to her eyes. I'm all muddled. I think you are more upset than you realise. I'll be as quick as I can. Your father made this scene in your room. You say he screamed. Did anyone hear him? Yes, Mummy did. She came in. What happened? I said, go away, darling. It's all right. I didn't want her to be involved. He nearly killed her with the things he did. Sometimes we never knew what happened between them. It was all secret, like a door shutting quietly as you walk along a passage. Did she go away? Not at once. He told her he'd found out that Richard and I were lovers. He said, it doesn't matter. I don't want to tell you. She was terrified. He was stabbing at her in some way I couldn't understand. Then, quite suddenly, he told her to go to her own room. She went at once, and he followed her. He locked me in. That's the last I saw of him, but I heard him go downstairs later. Were you locked in all night? No, Richard Hislop's room is next to mine. He came up and spoke through the wall to me. He wanted to unlock the door, but I said, better not, in case. He came back. Then, much later, Guy came home. As he passed my door, I tapped on it. The key was in the lock, and he turned it. Did you tell him what had happened? Just that there'd been a row. He only stayed a moment. Can you hear the radio from your room? She seemed surprised. The wireless? Well, yes. faintly. Did you hear it after your father returned to the study? I don't remember. Think. While you lay awake all that long time until your brother came home. I'll try. When he came out and found Richard and me, it wasn't going. They'd been working, you see. No, I can't remember hearing it at all unless... Wait a moment. Yes. After he'd gone back to the study from my mother's room, I remember there was a loud crash of static, very loud. And then I think it was quiet for some time. I fancy I heard it again later. Oh, I've remembered something else. After the static, my bedside radiator went out. I suppose there was something wrong with the electricity supply. That would account for both, wouldn't it? The heater went on again about 10 minutes later. And did the radio begin again then, do you think? I don't know. I'm very vague about that. It started again sometime before I went to sleep. Thank you very much indeed. I won't bother you any longer now. All right, said Philippa calmly, and went away. Alleyn sent for Chase and questioned him about the rest of the staff and about the discovery of the body. Emily was summoned and dealt with. When she departed, awestruck but complacent, Alleyn turned to the butler. Chase, he said, had your master any peculiar habits? Yes, sir. In regard to the wireless? Oh, I beg pardon, sir. I thought you meant generally speaking. Well then, generally speaking. If I may say so, sir, he was a mass of them. How long have you been with him? 2 months, sir, and due to leave at the end of the week. Oh? Why are you leaving? Chase produced the classic remark of his kind. There are some things, he said, that flesh and blood will not stand, sir. One of them's being spoke to like Mr. Tonks spoke to his staff. Ah, his peculiar habits, in fact. In my opinion, sir, he was mad, stark staring. With regard to the radio, did he tinker with it? I can't say I've ever noticed, sir. I believe he knew quite a lot about wireless. When he tuned the thing, had he any particular method, any characteristic attitude or gesture? I don't think so, sir. I never noticed, and yet I've often come into the room when he was at it. I can seem to see him now, sir. Yes, yes, said Alleyn swiftly. That's what we want, a clear mental picture. How was it? Like this? In a moment he was across the room and seated in Septimus's chair. He swung round to the cabinet and raised his right hand to the tuning control. Like this. No, sir, said Chase promptly. That's not him at all. Both hands it should be. Ah. Up went Alleyn's left hand to the volume control. More like this? Yes, sir, said Chase slowly, but there's something else, and I can't recollect what it was. Something he was always doing. Oh, it's in the back of my head, sir, you know, just at the edge of my memory, as you might say. Oh, I know. It's a kind of something to do with irritation, said Chase slowly. Irritation? His? No, it's no good, sir. I can't get it. Perhaps later. Now look here, Chase. What happened to all of you last night? All the servants, I mean. We were all out, sir, it being Christmas Eve. The mistress sent for me yesterday morning. She said we could take the evening off as soon as I'd taken in Mr. Tonks's grog tray at 9 o'clock. So we went, ended Chase simply. When? The rest of the staff got away about 9. I left at 10 past, sir, and returned about 11:30. The others were back then, and all in bed. I went straight to bed myself, sir. You came in by a back door, I suppose? Yes, sir. We've been talking it over. None of us noticed anything unusual. Can you hear the wireless in your part of the house? No, sir. Well, said Alleyn, looking up from his notes, that'll do, thank you. Before Chase reached the door, Fox came in. Beg pardon, sir, said Fox. I just want to take a look at the Radio Times on the desk. He bent over the paper, wetted a gigantic thumb, and turned a page. That's it, sir, shouted Chase suddenly. That's what I tried to think of. That's what he was always doing. But what? Licking his fingers, sir. It was a habit, said Chase. That's what he always did when he sat down to the radio. I heard Mr. Hislop tell the doctor it nearly drove him demented the way the master couldn't touch a thing without first licking his fingers. Quite so, said Alleyn. In about 10 minutes, ask Mr. Hislop if he will be good enough to come in for a moment. That'll be all, thank you, Chase. Well, sir, remarked Fox when Chase had gone, if that's the case, and what I think's right, it'd certainly make matters worse. Good heavens, Fox, what an elaborate remark. What does it mean? If metal knobs were substituted for Bakelite ones and fine wires brought through the holes to make contact, then he'd get a bigger bump if he tuned in with damp fingers. Yes, and he always used both hands, Fox, sir. Approach the Tonkses again. You haven't left him alone, of course. Bailey's in there, making out he's interested in the light switches. He's found the main switchboard under the stairs. There's signs of a blown fuse having been fixed recently. In a cupboard underneath, there are odd lengths of flex and so on. Same brand as this on the wireless and the heater. Ah, yes, could the cord from the adapter to the radiator be brought into play? By gum, said Fox, you're right, that's how it was done, Chief. The heavier flex was cut away from the radiator and shoved through. There was a fire, so he wouldn't want the radiator and wouldn't notice. It might have been done that way, certainly, but there's little to prove it. Return to the bereaved Tonkses, my Fox, and ask prettily if any of them remember Septimus's peculiarities when tuning his wireless. Fox met little Mr. Hislop at the door and left him alone with Alleyn. Philippa had been right, reflected the inspector, when she said Richard Hislop was not a noticeable man. He was nondescript. Grey eyes, drab hair, rather pale, rather short, rather insignificant. And yet, last night, there had flashed up between those two the realization of love. Romantic, but rum, thought Alleyn. Do sit down, he said. I want you, if you will, to tell me what happened between you and Mr. Tonks last evening. What happened? Yes, you all dined at 8, I understand. Then you and Mr. Tonks came in here. Yes. What did you do? He dictated several letters. Anything unusual take place? Oh, no. Why did you quarrel? Quarrel? The quiet voice jumped a tone. We didn't quarrel, Mr. Alleyn. Perhaps that was the wrong word. What upset you? Philippa's told you. Yes, sir, she was wise to do so. What was the matter, Mr. Hislop? Apart from what she told you, Mr. Tonks was a difficult man to please. I often irritated him. I did so last night. In what way? In almost every way. He shouted at me. I was startled and nervous, clumsy with papers and making mistakes. I wasn't well. I blundered and then I broke down. I have always irritated him. My mannerisms... Had he no irritating mannerisms himself? My God! What were they? I can't think of anything in particular. It doesn't matter, does it? Anything to do with the wireless, for instance? There was a short silence. No, said Hislop. Was the radio on in here last night after dinner? For a little while, not after the incident in the hall. At least I don't think so. I don't remember. What did you do after Miss Philippa and her father had gone upstairs? I followed and listened outside the door for a moment. He had gone very white and had backed away from the desk. And then? I heard someone coming. I remembered Dr. Meadows had told me to ring him up if there was one of the scenes. I returned here and rang him up. He told me to go to my room and listen. If things got any worse, I was to telephone again. Otherwise, I was to stay in my room. It's next to hers. And you did this? He nodded. Could you hear what Mr. Tonks said to her? A good deal of it. What did you hear? He insulted her. Mrs. Tonks was there. I was just thinking of ringing Dr. Meadows up again when she and Mr. Tonks came out and went along the passage. I stayed in my room. You didn't try to speak to Miss Philippa. We spoke through the wall. She asked me not to ring Dr. Meadows, but to stay in my room. In a little while, perhaps it was as much as 20 minutes, I really don't know, I heard him come back and go downstairs. I again spoke to Philippa. She implored me not to do anything and said that she herself would speak to Dr. Meadows in the morning. So I waited a little longer and then went to bed. And to sleep? My God, no. Did you hear the wireless again? Yes, at least I heard static. Are you an expert on wireless? No, I know the ordinary things. Nothing much. How did you come to take this job, Mr. Hislop? I answered an advertisement. You're sure you don't remember any particular mannerism of Mr. Tonks's in connection with the radio? No? And you can tell me no more about your interview in the study that led to the scene in the hall? No. Will you please ask Mrs. Tonks if she will be kind enough to speak to me for a moment? "Certainly," said Hislop, and went away. Septimus's wife came in looking like death. Alleyn got her to sit down and asked her about her movements on the preceding evening. She said she was feeling unwell and dined in her room. She went to bed immediately afterwards. She heard Septimus yelling at Philippa and went to Philippa's room. Septimus accused Mr. Hislop and her daughter of terrible things. She got as far as this and then broke down quietly. Alleyn was very gentle with her. After a little while he had learned that Septimus had gone to her room with her and had continued to speak of terrible things. "What sort of things?" asked Alleyn. "He was not responsible," said Isabel. "He didn't know what he was saying. I think he'd been drinking." She thought he'd remained with her for perhaps a quarter of an hour, possibly longer. He left her abruptly, and she heard him go along the passage past Philippa's door and presumably downstairs. She had stayed awake for a long time. The wireless could not be heard from her room. Alleyn showed her the curtain knobs, but she seemed quite unable to take in their significance. He let her go, summoned Fox, and went over the whole case. "What's your idea on the show?" he asked when he had finished. "Well, sir," said Fox in his stolid way, "on the face of it, the young gentlemen have got alibis. We'll have to check them up, of course, and I don't see we can go much further until we have done so." "For the moment," said Alleyn, "let us suppose Masters Guy and Arthur be safely established behind cast-iron alibis. What then?" "Then we've got the young lady, the old lady, the secretary, and the servants. Let us parade them. But first, let us go over the wireless game. You'll have to watch me here. I gather that the only way in which the radio could be fixed to give Mr. Tonks his quietus is like this. Control knobs removed, holes bored in front panel with fine drill, metal knobs substituted and packed with blotting paper to insulate them from metal shafts and make them stay put, heavier flex from adapter to radiator cut, and the ends of the wires pushed through the drilled holes to make contact with the new knobs. Thus we have a positive and negative pole. Mr. Tonks bridges the gap, gets a mighty wallop as the current passes through him to the earth. The switchboard fuse is blown almost immediately. All this is rigged by murderer while Sepp was upstairs bullying wife and daughter. Sepp revisited study sometime after 10:20. Whole thing was made ready between 10, when Arthur went out, and the time Sepp returned, say about 10:45. The murderer reappeared, connected radiator with flex, removed wires, changed back knobs, and left the thing tuned in. Now, I take it that the burst of static described by Philippa and Hislop would be caused by the short circuit that killed our Septimus. That's right. It also affected all the heaters in the house. Vide Miss Tonks's radiator. Yes, he put all that right again. It would be a simple enough matter for anyone who knew how to. He'd just have to fix the fuse on the main switchboard. How long do you say it would take to, what's the horrible word, to recondition the whole show? Said Fox deeply. I'd guess 15 minutes, sir. You'd have to be nippy. Yes, agreed Alleyn. He or she. I don't see a female making a success of it, grunted Fox. Look here, Chief, you know what I'm thinking? Why did Mr. Hislop lie about deceased's habit of licking his thumbs? You say Hislop told you he remembered nothing, and Chase says he overheard him saying the trick nearly drove him dippy. Exactly, said Alleyn. He was silent for so long that Fox felt moved to utter a discreet cough. Eh? Said Alleyn. Yes, Fox, yes. It'll have to be done. He consulted the telephone directory and dialed a number. May I speak to Dr. Meadows? Oh, it's you, is it? Do you remember Mr. Hislop telling you that Septimus Tonks's trick of wetting his fingers nearly drove Hislop demented? Are you there? You don't? Sure? All right. Hislop rang up at 10:20, you say, and you telephoned him at 11. Sure of the times? I see. I'd be glad if you'd come round. Can you? Well, do if you can. He hung up the receiver. Get Chase again, will you, Fox? Chase, recalled, was most insistent that Mr. Hislop had spoken about it to Dr. Meadows. It was when Mr. Hislop had flu, sir. I went up with the doctor. Mr. Hislop had a high temperature and was talking very excited. He kept on, saying the master had guessed his ways had driven him crazy, and that the master kept on purposely to aggravate. He said if it went on much longer, he didn't know what he was talking about, sir, really. What did he say he'd do? Well, sir, he said he'd do something desperate to the master, but it was only his ramblings, sir. I dare say he wouldn't remember anything about it. No, said Alleyn, I dare say he wouldn't. When Chase had gone, he said to Fox, go and find out about those boys and their alibis. See if they can put you onto a quick means of checking up. Get Master Guy to corroborate Miss Philippa's statement that she was locked in her room. Fox had been gone for some time, and Alleyn was still busy with his notes when the study door burst open, and in came Dr. Meadows. Look here, my giddy sleuth hound, he shouted. What's all this about Hislop? Who says he disliked Sep's abominable habits? Chase does, and don't bawl at me like that. I'm worried. So am I, blast you. What are you driving at? You can't imagine that poor little broken-down hack is capable of electrocuting anybody, let alone Sep. I have no imagination, said Alleyn wearily. I wish to God I hadn't called you in. If the wireless killed Sep, it was because he'd monkeyed with it. And put it right after it had killed him? Dr. Meadows stared at Alleyn in silence. Now, said Alleyn, you've got to give me a straight answer. Did Hislop, while he was semi-delirious, say that this habit of Tonks's made him feel like murdering him? I'd forgotten Chase was there, said Dr. Meadows. Yes, you'd forgotten that. But even if he did talk wildly, Alleyn, what of it? Damn it, you can't arrest a man on the strength of a remark made in delirium. I don't propose to do so. Another motive has come to light. You mean Phipps, last night? Did he tell you about that? She whispered something to me this morning. I'm very fond of Phipps. My God, are you sure of your grounds? Yes, said Alleyn, I'm sorry. I think you'd better go, Meadows. Are you going to arrest him? I have to do my job. There was a long silence. Yes, said Dr. Meadows at last. You have to do your job. Goodbye, Alleyn. Fox returned to say that Guy and Arthur had never left their parties. He had got hold of two of their friends. Guy and Mrs. Tonks confirmed the story of the locked door. It's a process of elimination, said Fox. It must be the secretary. He fixed the radio while deceased was upstairs. He must have dodged back to whisper through the door to Miss Tonks. I suppose he waited somewhere down here until he heard the deceased blow himself to blazes, and then put everything straight again, leaving the radio tuned on. Alleyn was silent. What do we do now, sir? Said Fox. I want to see the hook inside the front door where they hang their keys. Fox, looking dazed, followed his superior to the little entrance hall. Yes, there they are, said Alleyn. He pointed to a hook with two latch keys hanging from it. You could scarcely miss them. Come on, Fox. Back in the study they found Hislop with Bailey in attendance. Hislop looked from one yard man to another. I want to know if it's murder. We think so, said Alleyn. I want you to realise that Philippa, Miss Tonks, was locked in her room all last night. Until her brother came home and unlocked the door, said Alleyn. That was too late. He was dead by then. How do you know when he died? It must have been when there was that crash of static. Mr. Hislop, said Alleyn, why would you not tell me how much that trick of licking his fingers exasperated you? But how do you know? I never told anyone. You told Dr. Meadows when you were ill. I don't remember. He stopped short. His lips trembled. Then suddenly he began to speak. Very well, it's true. For 2 years he's tortured me. You see, he knew something about me. 2 years ago, when my wife was dying, I took money from the cash box in that desk. I paid it back and thought he hadn't noticed. He knew all the time. From then on, he had me where he wanted me. He used to sit there like a spider. I'd hand him a paper. He'd wet his thumbs with a clicking noise and a sort of complacent grimace. Click, click. Then he'd thumb the papers. He knew it drove me crazy. He'd look at me and then click, click. And then he'd say something about the cash. He'd never quite accused me, just hint. And I was impotent. You think I'm insane? I'm not. I could have murdered him. Often and often I've thought how I'd do it. Now you think I have done it. I haven't. There's the joke of it. I hadn't the pluck. And last night when Philippa showed me she cared, it was like heaven. Unbelievable. For the first time since I've been here, I didn't feel like killing him. and last night somebody else did. He stood there, trembling and vehement. Fox and Bailey, who had watched him with bewildered concern, turned to Alleyn. He was about to speak when Chase came in. "Note for you, sir," he said to Alleyn. "It came by hand." Alleyn opened it and glanced at the first few words. He looked up. "You may go, Mr. Hislop. Now I've got what I expected, what I fished for." When Hislop had gone, they read the letter. "Dear Alleyn, don't arrest Hislop. I did it. Let him go at once if you've arrested him, and don't tell Phipp you ever suspected him. I was in love with Isabel before she met Sep. I've tried to get her to divorce him, but she wouldn't because of the kids. Damn nonsense, but there's no time to discuss it now. I've got to be quick. He suspected us. He reduced her to a nervous wreck. I was afraid she'd go under altogether. I thought it all out. Some weeks ago I took Phipps's key from the hook inside the front door. I had the tools and the flex and wire all ready. I knew where the main switchboard was and the cupboard. I meant to wait until they all went away at New Year, but last night, when Hislop rang me, I made up my mind at once. He said the boys and servants were out and Phipps locked in her room. I told him to stay in his room and to ring me up in half an hour if things hadn't quieted down. He didn't ring up. I did. No answer. So I knew Sep wasn't in his study. I came round, let myself in, and listened. All quiet upstairs, but the lamp still on in the study, so I knew he'd come down again. He'd said he wanted to get the midnight broadcast from somewhere. I locked myself in and got to work. When Sep was away last year, Arthur did one of his modern monstrosities of painting in that study. He talked about the knobs making good patterns. I noticed that they were all very like the ones on the radio, and later on I tried one and saw that it would fit if I packed it up a bit. Well, I did the job just as you worked it out, and it only took 12 minutes. Then I went into the drawing room and waited. He came down from Isabel's room and evidently went straight to the radio. I hadn't thought it would make such a row, and half expected someone would come down. No one did come. I went back, switched off the wireless, mended the fuse in the main switchboard using my torch. Then I put everything right in the study. There was no particular hurry. No one would come in while he was there, and I got the radio going as soon as possible to suggest he was at it. I knew I'd be called in when they found him. My idea was to tell them that he died of a stroke. I'd been warning Isabel it might happen at any time. As soon as I saw the burned hand, I knew that cat wouldn't jump. I'd have tried to get away with it if Chase hadn't gone round bleating about electrocution and burned fingers. Hislop saw the hand. I daren't do anything but report the case to the police. But I thought you never twigged the knobs. One up on you. I might have bluffed through it if you hadn't suspected Hislop. Can't let you hang the blighter. I'm enclosing a note to Isabel, who won't forgive me, and an official one for you to use. You'll find me in my bedroom upstairs. I'm using cyanide. It's quick. I'm sorry, Alleyn. I think you knew, didn't you? I've bungled the whole game. But if you will be a super sleuth, goodbye. Henry Meadows.
If you like that story, consider supporting me as a patron. That way you help me make more stories for you and get access to a patrons-only library of stories. Lots more hours for you to listen to. I know. Before you hit the keyboards, before you tap out, I know it's Inspector Alleyn, not Inspector Alleyn. And I actually only found that out when I was doing the research at the end of it. I should have done the research beforehand, but that's not the way I work. I'm what they call arse over tit. And so, Alleyn. So even now, people haven't even got to this bit where I apologise, and they've already written the angry comments. You should have known, how disgusting, and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, at least I got Ngaio Marsh, I think. Ngaio, it's a Maori name apparently. The G is silent. I was put off doing any stories from her because I was scared of saying her name. And it could be Neo, but I think it's Ngaio. I did do a little bit of research because old Donald Rumsfeld, he was right again, and he didn't invent this. But it's the things that you think you know that you don't know. There's the known knowns. No, there are the known knowns. There are the known knowns. We haven't even gone to the story yet. There are the known unknowns, which you're relatively comfortable and about like Ngaio, Marsh. I knew I didn't know. All right, and there are the unknown unknowns, which is Alleyn, which is now a known, but it used to be an unknown. So it's moved across. We could do a grid like a Johari window. You should do a Johari window. They're great. I'm not going to explain what they are, but we used to do them when we were doing training and stuff. So anyway, I'm sorry, Alleyn. Some people are just not going to be happy or placated by my grovelling apology. And I say to them, I'm sorry. Anyway, never mind. So, Ngaio Marsh, born 1895, died 1982. She was a New Zealand lass. She was frae New Zealand, as they say. And she was a dame at some point. She wasn't born a dame, she got made a dame. So, a dame of the British Empire. 1895, 1982, as we said, she was from New Zealand. She was not only a crime writer, but she was a theatre director and was celebrated as one of the queens of crime during the golden age of detective fiction. So the others, you know them well. Agatha Christie, also a dame. Dorothy L. Sayers, dame, potentially. Marjorie Allingham, not a dame. That's an unknown there. Where is it? A known unknown? She carved, anyway, back to Ngaio. Nye, she was probably called by her friends. She carved a distinctive niche with her sophisticated prose, theatrical settings, and the enduring character of Chief Inspector Roderick Alleyn. Got it right. Born in Christchurch, New Zealand, Marsh was the only child of Rose and Henry Marsh. Her upbringing fostered a love of arts with early inclinations towards painting and the stage. I can't say that was true for me. She received her education at St Margaret's College in Christchurch. Mine was more... that dancer guy from Yorkshire, dancing, writing poems. Get yourself down, steelworks, lad. But I rose above it. Actually, the closest steelworks down. So anyway, I'm a bit lost today, aren't I? So she had early inclination. She received her education at Margaret's College in Christchurch, where she was one of the very first pupils to attend, followed by studies at Canterbury College School of Art in Canterbury, not Kent, but New Zealand. However, her artistic aspirations soon led her to the world of theatre, joining the Alan Wilkie Company, not Elaine Wilkie, as an actress in 1916 and touring New Zealand. In 1928, she makes her pivotal journey to London, a move that would profoundly shape her career. While continuing to work in the theatre, she established a handicraft shop called Touch and Go, it's a good name, which sold decorated trays, bowls and lampshades. She then turned her hand to writing, publishing her first detective novel, A Man Lay Dead, in 1934. So what age was she then? She was relatively late, so she would be 39, introducing the world to the debonair and intelligent Roderick Alleyn of Scotland Yard. Marsh's novels, I'm going to stop stressing that because it become tedious. Marsh's novels became known for their meticulously crafted plots, witty dialogue and vivid descriptions of place. Her theatrical background often infused her mysteries with settings ranging from backstage dramas in Enter a Murderer to operatic productions in Opening Night. Other notable works included Death at the Bar, Overture to Death and Light Thickens. Marsh masterfully blended the conventions of the classic detective novel with her own unique sensibilities. Although the majority of her novels are set in England, Marsh frequently drew upon her New Zealand heritage. 4 of her novels take place in New Zealand, offering a glimpse into the cultural landscape of her homeland. Colour scheme is of particular interest for its inclusion of Maori characters, which was quite novel for the genre at the time, and for its subtle critique of British colonialism. Leave that there. Beyond her literary achievements, Marsh remained deeply committed to the theatre. After returning to New Zealand following the Second World War, she became a leading figure in the local theatre scene, directing Shakespearean productions to great acclaim. Her work with the Canterbury University College Drama Society spanned several decades, nurturing generations of aspiring actors and directors. The Ngaio Marsh Theatre at the University of Canterbury stands as a lasting tribute to her contribution to performing arts. to the performing arts. In recognition of her outstanding achievements, Marsh received numerous honours, including being appointed an Officer of the Order of the British Empire, OBE, 1948, and Dame Commander of the Order of the British Empire, DBE, 1966. You've got a picture her as Galadriel in Amazon's production of The Rings of Power. She's all togged up in figure-hugging armour with a sword that's gleaming, and she's a Dame Commander into the infidel orcs. Knock them down. She's a girl boss, and that's what Ngaio Marsh was in the days before girl bosses were even invented. She was a girl boss, she was inducted into the prestigious. I only say that because you say interdict is indict, isn't it? Interdict, is it? I think the C is. I'm a bit lost here. Let's just start again. I've had a lot of coffee this morning, I should say. I have this site where people can buy me coffee called Buy Me Coffee, Buy Me a Coffee, and people can contribute if they think what I've done is worth contributing for, and some do. And so they buy me coffee. Now, some days people buy me a lot of coffee. And I feel like, I should spend it on coffee, because I haven't said, just give me some cash and I'll spend it on Led Zeppelin CDs. The dogs ate the second disc of Physical Graffiti the other day, and Sheila, I couldn't find it. I was wandering around going, where is that flipping CD? And I said to Sheila at one point, have the dogs eaten this? And she kind of distracted me, and I can't remember what she said, but she moved the subject on. I'm easily distracted, and then a bit later on, I'm like, we're at dinner, we're at a tea as we call it. We're sitting down eating our tea, and I say to her, I can't find that for the life of me. I'm sure the dogs must have eaten it, but the bits would have been somewhere. She then started to crack up, and I'm like, she said, oh, they did eat it, and I picked it up. I didn't want you to be upset. I said, disc 2 was in it. It's my favourite. Disc 2. It's got In the Light and all. I like disc 1 as well. But so that was the truth of it. What that has to do with Ngaio Marsh, hard to know, isn't it? But anyway, she was unofficially engaged to a fella called Edward Bristol, who tragically died in action during the Great War. She never married and had no children. I prefer the usage Great War to WW1. That's just common. While she enjoyed close, lifelong friendships with women, she also denied being a lesbian. In 1965, she published her autobiography, Black Beach and Honeydew, offering a personal reflection on her life and career. She died in Christchurch in 1982, leaving behind a rich legacy, etc., etc., etc. Her home in Kashmir is preserved as a museum, and you can go and see it there if you're in New Zealand. And if you are in New Zealand, if you're visiting, as well as the Hobbits, you should probably... I would go and see the Hobbits and have a vision of Galadriel, I think. Lady of the Trees. The Sindar elves thought it meant that, but it doesn't. It means something else in Quenya. But it was a bit of folk etymology on the part of the Sindar elves, and they called her Lady of the Trees. And she lived in Lothlorien anyway, didn't she? But so if you're there for that, go and see Ngaio Marsh as well, and see another girl boss. And then you could even do a girl boss tour of New Zealand, couldn't you? Anyway, let's talk about Chief Inspector Roderick Alleyn. So he's a gentleman. That is set out in the story, isn't it? Our story, Death on the Air, is set out. He's trying to talk to the Tronkses. Actually, they're called Tonkses. When I was doing the reviews and I was reading up on them, somebody had done a review and called them Tronks all the way through. It's nearly as bad as calling Inspector Alleyn. Anyway, not quite though. But so... yeah, and he says, we'll have the police in. Oh, do we? They say. And he goes, oh, but he's a gentleman. I go, that's all right then. As long as he's a gentleman, he's one of those riffraff. We'll have him round. We'll make him come in the back entrance, of course. No, he's a gentleman. He can come in the front entrance. Of course. Oh, that's my chip on my left shoulder. Somebody once said to me, Tony, you're perfectly balanced. You've got a chip on both shoulders. I thought that was quite funny. And quite true. What is my second chip about? Oh, let's not go into it. So he appears in all 32 of Marsh's detective novels, published between 1934 and 1982. He's a complex character, and he evolves as the story goes forward and the societal landscape of the 20th century, whereby by 1982 you didn't have to go in the back door if you were common. You could go in the front door as long as they invited you. I think if you weren't invited, probably you would go in the back door or a window and you'd be a cat burglar. So yeah, he's Alleyn. So he's a gentleman. So he's the younger brother of a baronet, Sir George Alleyn. Alleyn, God, get it right, Tone. Sir George Alleyn, and he was educated at Eton and Oxford, proper education. This elevated social standing grants him access to a wide range of social circles, from aristocratic country houses to bohemian artistic gatherings, allowing him to navigate diverse environments with ease and understanding. There you go. Because he's posh, you see. So, funnily enough, this is a minefield doing this kind of thing. I started off doing stories, and a lot of these are written. You can't do him with a Geordie accent, so you have to do him upper crust. So I have to try and learn how to speak properly, and that was a bit of a joke there. Properly. Was being a bit loaded, that one. That's my chip was hurting me, and so properly as a joke. So it wasn't a funny joke, but so I did it, and then I do him like that, and then somebody says, "You've lost yourself, Tony. Why are you gone so posh?" Somebody said that. And I'm like, well, I'm just doing it. It's horses for courses, isn't it? And then I did another one that did one by Val Dennis Baker, and I did it. I thought, well, I'm going to do it just in a kind of demotic accent like my own. And somebody put query. This is what they put, but a regional accent query. You know, man, you can't win. The whole process of doing these things and getting comments from the public, huge numbers of the public, really, is soured me. Being honest with you, it's soured me. But anyway, let's not go into that either. Too much coffee. So anyway, let's talk about Roderick Alleyn. I reckon. Anyway, oh God, I was going to give you the etymology of the word Roderick. I think it's from the Brythonic Rhydderch into Scottish. And becomes a Scottish name, Roderick, substituted into English phonetics. Anyway, so he joins the Metropolitan Police, and he rises through the ranks. Well, he's going to, is he? He's not going to be the tea boy or working in a lowly. He's not going to be a dog handler, is he? You know, he's a baronet's brother. So he possesses a sharp intellect, a keen eye for detail, and a deep understanding of human psychology, qualities that enable him to unravel the most intricate and baffling of crimes. In the early novels, his physical appearance is often described as striking, with a resemblance to a monk and a grandee, tall, dark, and handsome. This, combined with his intellect, makes him an intriguing character, or a stereotype. I mean, we've got Lord Peter Wimsey, haven't we? Who's different to Alleyn. He's funnier. He's slightly absurd. I mean, I think possibly because of the way he's played on TV. I have that picture of him. Alleyn's. I don't know if you remember seeing. There was a TV series done of Inspector Alleyn as well. And who was the actor, who's very patrician. So anyway, which he has to be really in doing this character. He's a detailed observer. He becomes emotionally invested in the crimes he investigates. Not massively in this one, displaying empathy for the victims. I think we do see that particularly with the daughter Philippa Phipps. Empathy with the victims and profound sense of justice. I think that is there. As the series progress, Alleyn's personal life becomes increasingly interwoven with his professional life. His marriage to Agatha Troy, a renowned painter, introduces a new dimension to his character. Of course, Ngaio Marsh was a lot more bohemian than him. She wasn't particularly aristocratic. But I mean, I think writers have a sense of what sells as well, and people have still perhaps an abiding interest in the aristocracy. I mean, think of old Harry, Prince Harry, and I was just thinking Harry's kind of a pet name for Henry. So was he christened Henry? I don't know. And Meghan Markle, and how people love all that stuff, you know, and they just love it. And it was more so before we had P. Diddy, and I think he's some kind of celebrity, and the Kardashians. I don't really know much about these people, but you know, they apparently are famous. Well, they are famous because I've heard of them. And so, you know, people are... In these days, people love that, living their life vicariously through the wealthy and the privileged. You know, they're grinding away their lives, and they're like, oh, do you know what? I'm going to escape into this book, and I'm going to see the world through the eyes of somebody posh and rich and well connected. Hang on, yeah, the theme music started playing, which is usually my sign to shut up, but I've got a lot to say yet. I just need to keep on the point. So. Yeah, Alleyn, he marries a painter. His career revolves in line with historical events. He's deployed in counter-espionage in the Second World War. Upon his return to England, he's confronted with a society profoundly changed by the war. So, you know, he's more than just a detective. He's a reflection of the society he inhabits. But what I was saying is that... it's like, I say this about Le Carré and the Night Manager, and I think Frederick Forsyth did stories like this as well. A lot of these people are jet setters. They're massively rich. They travel the world. They have everything you would want to have. And we live our lives, you know, in a fantasy through them. Oh, you know, if I could just travel off to Switzerland and James Bond, you know, have beautiful women throw them. To be honest with you, I wouldn't know what to do with them at my age, but throw themselves at me and offer me cocaine, same thing. I don't want any of that. Just imagine me on cocaine, goodness me. So anyway, that's what I always used to say. People, and nobody really ever offered me drugs, but if they had, I'd say, imagine me on stimulants, goodness me. I'm bad enough on coffee. So anyway, let's talk about the story, Death on the Air. We've got Roderick Alleyn with the horrid Septimus Tonks, apparently the victim of accidental electrocution. You know this. So he's a horrid man, and he tyrannizes. The Christmas setting... some critics have said, it's a nice counterpoint because we've got the lovely Christmasness of it all versus the horridness of him, but I don't think the Christmasness of it, the Christmassiness of it, comes through. I mean, okay, it's on the radio in the morning, but there's no description of Christmas trees, or snow or Father Christmas. He doesn't come into it, and so I think the Christmas thing is like, it's irrelevant, really. Honestly, could be any time. I think she could have egged that up a bit. Egged it without over-egging it. And Alleyn, he has his minions to do his work for him. But that isn't a bad thing, because I think that emphasises the fact he's not a kind of... Many of the detectives are narcissistic individuals, aren't they? They are the be-all and end-all. Whereas at least Alleyn has his gang, and he actually listens to his men. They're his men. He's the top dog. But, fair play to him, I think. And he gets... It's actually nicely structured. So, first of all, we have the scene. Then we have Alleyn, and then we have Dr. Meadows being introduced. We have Alleyn and Heath. So my first point is this. Why did Meadows... He must know Alleyn. He must know he calls him a super sleuth, doesn't he? And he must know that this is the guy of all guys who is going to solve the thing. But is it... So why invite him in? Why not just get the local plod in, who may be incompetent? I'm not saying local plod are incompetent, but that's a general feeling in detective stories, isn't it? Even today, the local plod are always... It's the super dupers. If you watch True Detective, I loved the first 3 series of that, actually. They come in, and they're the super duper guys, and the local are corrupt and inept. So why didn't the doctor, who is the murderer... I was going to leave you a spoiler then about another detective story which I've done on the channel. If you've not heard it, I'll keep my mouth shut. And so why not get a Dopey Joe in? So I don't know why that. Is it because he's a gentleman? That seems to be the only reason why he'd call him. He's like, yeah, well, I've done this murder. It's gone a bit far. I was hoping to cover it up, but the police are going to have to get involved. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll control which police are coming, and we don't want any to be common in here. We want a super guy who's going to get me end up hanging myself. I think he poisons himself, doesn't he? But is it his snobbishness that leads to his death? Old Dr. Meadows. Is he's like, well, I could get a commoner to come in And that would get me off, though, because he's probably an idiot, because he's common. Oh, that's my chip. I could get the super sleuth gentleman, but these are such nice people. We can't have a commoner come in, so let's have a gentleman, even if it will lead to me dying. I just hope he won't get, So I think that was my first problem with it. That was probably my only problem with it, actually. And then the story goes on, and then it's very straightforward. Each of the people are called in. There's a lovely little red herring where we're getting really close to the end, and it's all set up for Mr. Hislop to be the one who did the murder. And it seems to be leading to a confession. I don't know if you felt this. Hislop was about to confess, and then there's a swerve, and Hislop says, "But I didn't do it. I haven't got the bottle." He doesn't say that, but he hasn't got the courage to do it, which is what everybody said about him all along. I thought there was actually a really lovely touch by her, Ngaio Marsh, whereby this very diligent, efficient, but ordinary, nondescript man, Hislop, but a decent man. He's taken this awful job with this awful man because he has to bring his kids up, So she portrays him as a really decent everyman, really, but not particularly brave. And yet, old Phipps, who could do better, financially, socially, she could get herself an alpha male, no doubt, or I don't know what they call them, a high value male, because she's of a certain class, isn't she? It's not this anyway. Let's not even into alpha females. Let's not even go there. I don't believe in that shiz anyway. Or do I? But I don't. I think it's. I don't want to get into that. I don't like it. But she could have done better, basically, couldn't she? You all know that, and she doesn't. And I think that kind of meeting of, and she's massively bullied by her father and driven down and oppressed by her father, who's an absolute pig, and so is her mother, oppressed. And I thought that was a lovely little human touch, that meeting, and then they realise that they really care for each other. I liked that, and I must admit, I liked Alleyn. I thought was witty. I thought he was urbane, of course, but I thought he was sympathetic as well, and so I liked him as a character. Now, going back to the plot, I think she leaves it late in the day. It works really well in that we think that the cat is in the bag, and then he says, "Well, I didn't do it." Oh, and we've only got a page to go. Well, you didn't know that, but I was looking. I'd been looking to see how long I had to go, and then we get this kind of letter, and it's all a bit of Deus Ex Machina. It's a bit like, "Oh right, okay, right, the doctor did it," because. And I'm not sure that is sufficiently foreshadowed so that we go, of course, whereas in the other book I was talking about, it is, by another author, it is, but in this, it felt like there was a little bit of foreshadowing. I think the foreshadowing I picked up, and there may be other stuff, because, I mean, my big point is, why would the doctor, if he was guilty, why would he invite the super sleuth in? So that makes you think, no, it isn't him. Why would he do this? But then the thing that was foreshadowed, I think, a little was how when Septimus makes a big deal of his daughter and Hislop in a clinch, probably a very innocent one. I don't want my mind to run on that. Get out of my head. Very innocent clinch. And then he makes a big deal of torturing his wife about it, and I think that is the foreshadowing there, isn't it? That it becomes evident when the doctor says, "Oh yeah, he was doing that because he knew she was," and he was that kind of man, wasn't he? He was the kind of man who held, and that is perhaps another bit of foreshadowing. He learned about Hislop borrowing money, and he used it to torture Hislop and keep him on the hook, and that's what he's done with his wife. He knows about her adultery, and he uses it to keep her on the hook. He doesn't let her go. He doesn't get angry. He doesn't do anything immediately horrible to her. I mean, he does, but finally horrible is what I mean. He doesn't throw her out. He doesn't beat her up. I'm not saying he should do these things, obviously, but he doesn't do that. But he's the kind of awful man who tortures people. So there was a bit of foreshadowing, but I still felt that the letter at the end was abrupt. That's it. Now, when we read other people's reviews, that is actually a general consensus that it works well, but the conclusion feels rushed and anticlimactic. So rather than a methodical deduction and dramatic unveiling, the killer's confession comes via a letter denying the reader the satisfaction of witnessing Alleyn piecing together the clues and exposing the truth through his own intellectual prowess. But to be fair to him, we are given a picture. He says, this is what I fished for. So late in the day, it's revealed to us that Alleyn knew this all along, and he was just waiting for the evidence. But an inhumane thing is that evidence came with the suicide of the doctor. Now, you could argue that was an easier ending for him than being hanged publicly, or being tried publicly and hanged privately. In those days, they didn't. The last public execution had gone. Maybe it hadn't. I don't know. I'd have to Google that. But so yeah. So the initial thought is Alleyn. He's fishing, and he sets it up so the doctor confesses, and he must know that a man of honour, the only thing left for him is to do a bit of harakiri. But so that's awful. But then if we realise the alternative is a public trial and hanging, okay, maybe not a public hanging, but maybe a public hanging. Then actually Alleyn's work doesn't take that Y out of the name. Just take it out, and stop me stumbling over it. Ugh. It's like all posh people have names that don't sound like if they're called Christopher, they're actually called Kit, or St. John. If they have a middle name, who else has a middle name? St. John, really. St. John. So and they go to Magdalen College. Actually, they go to Balliol College, I think. But anyway, never mind. But listen, it wasn't a bad story at all. It was a good story. I'm pleased to have finally got over my fear of saying her name. I'm probably going to be publicly corrected and humiliated in the comments section. But let's put my big pants on and face it out. Anyway, I hope you're all well. You can hear the dogs running around the background. Somebody said, why don't you take the dogs out of the room? I don't know how they talked, because it was written. But because people like to hear the dogs. They swapped. It was Callie behind me, and she swapped. It's now Jasper with his tail wagging. He's looking for his fight. Jasper's a boy, and so he's just 2 years old. And he likes a fight. And guess what? Sheila's come up the stairs, is standing behind me. I better see what she wants. She was just telling me that the traffic is terrible, and it was backed up to Booze Busters. And they weren't actually going into Booze Busters. It was just they were backed up to there. And we couldn't work out why. So we had a bit of a discussion about why the traffic. Neither of us really knew. So it was one of those discussions. I was telling you about Jasper. So Jasper's a boy dog, and he's just over 2. And we've got his sisters also. And they don't want to fight me, but Jasper, he loves a wrestle. He just has to have a wrestle with me every day. If he can have 3 or 4, yeah. And sometimes I'm really tired. It's late on, and or early in the morning. I do not want a fight right now. But he loves it. We have a wrestle, and I try not to hurt him. I can't say that I think he does try not to hurt me, to be fair, but he does rake me with his teeth sometimes. But he chews my ears very gently, and then he'll just have a little nip. And like that. But that's the way we live. That's the way we roll. What do you say? Laissez le bon temps rouler.